In 2007, J.K. Rowling released Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So it's been almost 16 years since that final book was released. And I haven't read through that series since then. So I decided to. So this video is going to be things that I loved, things that I noticed for the first time, and some things that just don't make sense about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you pick the book up. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody in the world has either seen or read a version of this story. However, if you haven't, there's obviously going to be a ton of spoilers from here forwards. So I read the books first because obviously they came out first. And the first thing that springs to mind from rereading this book is how on point the first movie is. So the book is about 300 pages long. And what that means is it's short enough that there is enough time in the first movie for them to get 95% of the things that happen in the book into that first movie. And that's one of the toughest things. Getting everything from a book into a movie is impossible, but that first movie matches up with this book so well. There are so many examples of lines in the movie taken from the book that are word for word exactly what was written. And when I reread this book, it really gave me a sense of just satisfaction with the first movie. Now, obviously, as the series goes on, that becomes impossible. The books get a lot bigger, and we already have covered the basics, so we're going into a lot more detail and backstory, side stories, so it gets more difficult, but the first movie especially matches up great to this book. However, of course, there are a few things that were missed out that I had completely forgotten about because I hadn't read the book in so long. One thing that isn't in the movies is the midnight duel. So Malfoy challenges Harry to a duel at midnight in, I think it's the trophy room, and essentially it's all a ruse. His goal is to get Harry expelled, and he tells Filch, and he also tells, Filch tells Mrs. Norris, and their goal is to catch him and kick him out of school, and I completely forgot about that. Another is Charlie Weasley's friends coming to take Norbert all the way to Romania. Although in the movie we do get the Norbert scenes, which is great, it isn't explained how he disappears or where he goes to, and that does happen in the books. And again, I'd completely forgotten about it, but more about that later. We miss out on the second Quidditch game. And in the final scenes, as our golden trio are making their way through the protection of each teacher before Harry can go and confront Quirrell at the Mirror of Erised, there are actually a couple of teachers' challenges that aren't included. So Professor Quirrell's, which is just a humongous troll, and then also Professor Snape's, which is potions involved, but really it's a logic challenge. And we just don't see those in the movie, and I think that's probably just because of timing. The second thing that I loved is just the details. That's what makes the Wizarding World so amazing, is all the oddities and strange things that happen throughout the course of reading these books, and it's impossible for you to fit all of that into movies as well. So to name a few that I'd forgotten, first is the length of the letter debacle. So when they're trying to get Harry his acceptance letter, in the movies it is done really, really well, but there are so many extra steps in the book. And the one that always makes me laugh is Harry sneaking down early in the morning to try and catch the postman on the corner of the street, and Uncle Vernon is sleeping underneath the letterbox, and that always makes me laugh. I forgot that owls wanted to be paid once they drop something off, so you have to pay them, and they have a little pouch on their leg and they won't leave until you do. There's a few other cool things as well. So there's like a big warning mantra at Gringotts, and I think Harry reads it out and we get that in the book. It's kind of like a poem. And another thing is the Sorting Hat's song as well. So the Sorting Hat does a song at the start of every single year, and I'd forgotten about it, and it was really, really cool. I think it gets increasingly more like a forewarning at the start of every year. Maybe it gets a bit more serious after the third or fourth year, but the first time round it's just really fun. And a few characters get ignored as well, just for the sake of time, I would guess. So Peeves, which is the poltergeist that haunts around Hogwarts and causes mischief. We have professors like Professor Binns, who one time, he was so old that he just fell asleep, died, and then woke up as a ghost and still went to class to teach, and he drones on and teaches the history of magic. And although they're not key characters, they are really, they add to the richness of the story. I forgot about the hilarity and the bias from Lee Jordan when he is commentating the Quidditch games. The giant hourglasses, which basically add up all the points so everyone can see as they go through the Great Hall, most likely, where their house is at in the House Cup and how have been won and lost, and I'd completely forgotten about those. And so many more little details that just make Hogwarts and the Wizarding World a place that we all love. And there are a few things that I don't ever remember picking up on when I was, a kid, like 15, 16 years ago. And some of these things are kind of small and minor, but I just noticed them this time round. So one, when Harry picks up the wand that eventually becomes his, it shoots out gold and red like sparkles, which is Gryffindor's colours, which I never noticed before, but essentially it was like a foretelling that he was going to be going to Gryffindor. The sorting hat, now that we know the ending, of course, and we know that the scar essentially is a Horcrux, and Harry has some of Voldemort inside of him, when the sorting hat is on Harry's head, it really says a lot of things that would allude to that. Like, obviously you can see inside of Harry that there is, he probably doesn't know it's Lord Voldemort. I would guess the hat's not that insightful, but you can see the hardcore Slytherin tendencies inside of Harry, and I realized that is probably the Horcrux and the part of Voldemort that's in there that the hat is sensing. He tells him he could be great in Slytherin and probably would put him there if he didn't ask to be in Gryffindor, which I think probably shows that, the sorting hat maybe gives us our very first clue to the fact that there's some of Voldemort inside of Harry. Now, this was kind of small, but the Mirror of Erised. Erised is just desire spelt backwards. I don't know if I'm slow to the game, but I never noticed that. And I also never really realized how often Fred and George are mentioned. They're mentioned constantly, almost in every single chapter. Like they're almost main characters. And one thing is, when it snows, they bewitch snowballs to bounce off the back of Quirrell's turban. We now know Voldemort is kind of occupying that space. So what that means is the Weasley twins, very young versions of them, at one point were bouncing snowballs off of Lord Voldemort's face. Talk about a fall from grace. So those are all the things I noticed. So now on to the things that just don't quite sit right with me now that I'm an adult reading this book. And before I go into these, they really don't matter. It's a book for young adults into adults, and then some children as well. Like, I was a child when I read the first one for sure. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. It doesn't take away from the book at all, but as an adult reading them, these are just some things that I noticed that don't really add up with the rest of the story. But maybe I'm wrong. Tell me in the comments if I've gotten any of these incorrect and there is an explanation. The first thing just moves the story along, and it's just the amount of accidental overhearing that occurs. Harry overhears Professor Snape like 4 or 5 times throughout the book, giving some crucial information or a nasty talk or walking in while his leg is bleeding. It just so many times it happens that it's like, okay, I get we need to move the story forwards, but this is the luckiest kid in the world. He also overhears Quirrell talking to himself / talking to Lord Voldemort on the back of his head. And also Malfoy overhears them talking about a dragon. It's just a plot device that is used constantly. And as a child, I never noticed, but as an adult, it was like a get out of jail free card for the author a couple of times. Maybe like 6 or 7 times throughout the whole book. And it's only 300 pages, so it just seemed like it was happening a lot. The next thing is, how on earth were Charlie's friends able to fly on broomsticks to one of the Hogwarts towers? I feel like that massively undermines how safe Hogwarts is. Like, we're constantly told no one can come in and out of the grounds. It's impossible for people to do that, and then they are able to. So correct me if I'm wrong, but surely they shouldn't be able to just fly unannounced adults to the top of a tower to meet some students. Like, that doesn't really add up with the safety of the school. Is there some kind of loophole that I'm missing here, or is that seem to be like a big plot hole? And the next one's not really a plot hole. It's more just some appreciation / fear of Dumbledore. So Dumbledore is amazing. Like, every single time he's in a scene, he just brings this kind of like whimsical nonsense grandfatherly figure who is also absolutely in control of every single situation. And from book 1, like, he just seems like such a good guy, but there are some things that just don't quite add up. But because obviously I have finished this series and I finished it, I've read the first 1 to 6 books a lot, but waiting for the 7th one to come out as well. But knowing the level of grandmaster chess moves that Dumbledore was playing makes me suspicious about a lot of the things he does in this book. So we know that Dumbledore and Snape are extremely close, even at this point here. And Snape knows that Quirrell wants to get the stone, most likely for Lord Voldemort. And he knows that pretty early, which means Dumbledore knows that pretty early. So he continues to let Harry Potter interact with him constantly. be left alone with him. And also, he knows that Harry has been very much enchanted by the Mirror of Erised, and he's given him an invisibility cloak, so able to walk around the castle at night or at day, unseen by anybody else. Twice he gives him the invisibility cloak, once at Christmas time and once when he loses it. And on top of that, he knows that Harry knows about the stone, because he sent Hagrid to pick it up on the same day he sent Hagrid to take Harry to Diagon Alley. Like, anyone would be able to put two and two together when they went to that vault, and then also it was said that that vault was the one that was raided as well. So it just really seems like he set Harry up to go after Quirrell at the end, and I don't know what the big win would be for him to do that, but I don't know, like J.K. Rowling seems like a very intelligent author with regards to her story building and her pre-planning. It's obvious that she was setting everything up for the entirety of the story before she even really started writing the first one, or so it would seem. So if you people who, know more about this universe than myself or have done more research, tell me, was Dumbledore trying to manufacture this final scene? Was there a reason behind that? Did he know that Harry would defeat him? Or was, I don't know, like what's going on there? You tell me, hopefully. But overall, this book absolutely transported me back to being a little kid. Like, the wonder of Hogwarts and the wonder of the wizarding world is the reason why that universe has done so well, and so many people are so obsessed with it, because it just makes you feel like you're home as well. Like, you really, me anyway, I can really associate with Harry, even though my upbringing was nothing like his at all. And yeah, it just transported me back to being a little kid. I couldn't put this book down. I read it within 2 days, the reread. And the final thing I noticed is that one of the best lines, or one of the most wholesome lines from the movie, isn't in this book. So right at the end, when they talk about going home, and Harry, he almost looks at the camera and he says, "I'm not going home, not really," and then hops on the train. That's not in the books. I completely forgotten that. So they stuck to the source material really, really well. And then at the end, they just threw in that absolutely iconic line. So obviously, the books are always better. It's impossible for a movie to out-compete a book, because with a book, you just can give off emotions. You can tie in backstories, everything in a paragraph in one interaction. And no matter how good an actor is, it's tough for them to do that. But as far as movie adaptations of books go, the movie is really, on point for this book. And that's it, guys. You tell me, have you reread these books? Did they hold up the second, third, 15th, 500th time that you read them? Did you enjoy them as much? Did you notice similar things to me on rereads? Have any of you waited 15, 16 years to reread these books? You let me know in the comments. Other than that, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I am going to be reading my way through the rest of these books, so watch out for that, and enjoy the rest of your day.